presented by allaccessretail.com. Welcome to Conversations on Retail. Join Mike Grain as he sits down with Jonathan Gregory, Director of Global Standards for GS1 US, to discuss emerging use cases for RFID at retail. Let's get started.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Conversations on Retail and the University of Arkansas Supply Chain. My name is Mike Grain, and we talk all things on-shelf availability and all the processes and technologies, et cetera, to drive it. And today we're really excited to have Jonathan Gregory back. We've had you, Jonathan, on this podcast once or twice. I can't remember. At least once. I can remember.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think, once or twice. I think we're at the same age where we're like, what was that?
Hey, no, I'm older than you are, and I still remember your name, so I feel really, really good about where I am in life. When I start calling you Sport and Champ, that means I have no idea who you are. Just so
there we go.
Jonathan's been with GS1. I'm going to have him introduce himself in a little bit, but today we're going to talk about all things RFID, tag data standards, and what some of the new unlocks are with some of the capability that GS1 is putting out in the marketplace. So before we get into detail, Jonathan, introduce yourself, and hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. Give us one fact about you that most people don't know. How about that?
One fact about me. Okay, so first I'll introduce myself, and then I'll share the fact. So, I've been in industry since 1995, dealing with enterprise resource planning systems initially, and data migration and processing, all that stuff. I was involved with the largest ERP implementation of its time at Pratt & Whitney, and developed a RFID competency within that context. So I started up in the aerospace environment, actually had the opportunity to do a tiny bit of work at Airbus as well, which they were really leading the industry in their adoption of the technology, and then moved over to retail. So that was quite a culture shock, going from shop floors with grumpy union guys to piped in music and carpeting, right? So it was quite a change. But that was really great. So I had a great, I got to kind of travel the world a little bit, with various RFID implementations, so Europe, the Far East, all that, just getting in factories and distribution centers and stores. So as far as things that people might not know, so let's see, I'm approaching the empty nest years with 4 kids. So I have a senior in high school as my youngest, and have certain kind of milestones or things going on. So my oldest was just at the Olympic National Park, which I'd been at when I was like 22. I rode my bike down the West Coast and rode right by Lake Crescent, and she was working there. So it was super cool to kind of see those bookends. And then one other note, so actually this Sunday, I think, will be the 10-year anniversary of my church that I'm at starting. So it's a church planted, and there's actually another church being planted, literally like, I think their first services this Sunday as well. So it's kind of neat. Been involved with leading worship there for all these years. So super neat.
Whoa. You lead worship for them?
Occasionally, like every 4 or 5 weeks or so, I'll be.
How have we never talked about this? I've been running sound for my church for 25 years. I'm in the worship. I don't play an instrument. I don't sing. You don't want me singing. You don't want me playing an instrument. Okay, so you play lead guitar and vocals?
Oh yeah.
All right, well, I got a whole trailer full of sound equipment, man. Let's go on the road. Let's take this thing.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Did not see. Every time I ask that question, I learn something new about somebody. So you can combine these things together. You could bring a jet engine into your 10-year anniversary and say, we are on a rocket ship or something. I mean, come on, you can have some fun with that, right?
It'll make something happen. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get back into the topic that we spend a lot of our days talking about, which is how do we make sure that there is stuff on the shelf for customers to buy, and how do we make sure that when customers order online, it's available for them to be picked and delivered to their car or their house or whatever it happens to be. And I'm going to take a little bit different twist about this, because we're going to specifically talk about RFID for food. RFID has traditionally been apparel, electronics, home products, general merchandise kind of thing. And that's great. We had 20 years of success with that. Obviously, there's been a lot of starts and stops along the way, but that's a foregone conclusion that people like Walmart and Nordstrom's and Dick's Sporting Goods and Macy's are going to be leveraging RFID for the apparel general merchandise. But I'm seeing a lot more interest in a different use case. When you think about the use case for RFID in retail today, it's predominantly, what do I have and where's it located? It's in the back room or on the sales floor. And what do I have at a high degree of accuracy? But there's this whole new use case in the food area, which is we've got product that actually goes bad. And so we need to be able to mark it down. Pairs of jeans are never going to go bad within reason, right? Yep. Bread, and I just saw that article that was published about sushi and all these other products have this thing called a markdown process. So walk us through what that looks like from a retail point of view, and kind of what are you thinking about the role that RFID could play in helping to manage that for retailers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And I like what you're saying here as far as it's really reflective of the food industry. Yeah, your inventory turns are so much faster. Right. One quick serve restaurant shared that they every 2 days they turn their inventory in store, which is amazing contrast there. And yeah, everything's always in the process of expiring. You're trying to beat the clock all the time, and the margins are less. Right. So you have higher volume items coming through that you're trying to address. So waste is one. So waste, consumer safety, and regulatory. So let's start with waste. The UN Environmental Program report of 2019 estimated that 363 million tons of food is wasted from retail and food service alone every year.
Say that number again.
363 million tons of food is wasted every year from retail and food service alone.
Oh my gosh.
It's a ton, right?
We should not have people hungry anywhere in the world if we do that. Right.
Of all global food production, 5% of all global food production is food service waste, and 2% is retail waste. So it's a huge economic opportunity, a huge social opportunity, environmental opportunity. And so if we can get in front of this, like we can have all these savings, if we can just reduce that, we can do so much good with that, and everybody's benefiting. Like nobody benefits from waste, right? So that's right. The first point is addressing waste. The second is consumer safety, of course, being able to detect, expired foods or recalled foods quickly and be able to pull them back, to be able to do that quick investigative work to say, oh, we have an issue here. All right, now where did all these like-kind things go, and let's get them back with precision recall. That has a certain benefit to brands as well. And so that's awfully clear, right? And then third is regulatory. Like in the US, we have FSMA Rule 204 saying you have to track these critical events, critical tracking events through the supply chain. And RFID is a great mechanism for capturing that data.
Wow. So help me understand that, though. So I get the whole RFID. I have a unique serial number and what I call the UPC or the G10 together that defines that item. And I understand that I can count things, et cetera. Talk to us a little bit about, okay, what role does RFID play other than knowing how many packages of bread or packaged meat or whatever I've got? Obviously, that would work. I'm struggling. I'm not struggling because I know where your answer is going to be, but I'm sure the audience is like, how's that got anything to do with telling me when things are about to expire? So how does that work?
So coming back to the aerospace example for a second. So Airbus, there was a gentleman, Carlo Nizam, who spoke several times at RFID Journal, the live conference there. And they were just such a leader in the industry about 10 years ago. And there's a great quote. I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but basically he was saying that visibility is needed to have process improvements, right? So you can't improve what you can't measure. You can't measure what you can't see or you don't know, right? So the basis of any process improvement, any business savings is going to be visibility. And so RFID gives you that item level, a unique identity that you then easily see through this means. So you don't have to have line of sight, right, in order to read an RFID tag. So you can have something that's just reading items as they flow in and out of different choke points, different store or supply chain choke points. So yeah, I would say that at a very broad level. Maybe that's too broad. I can go into more detail if you want.
Yeah, I do want to double click on that a little bit because today, when we talk about RFID, there's an RF part, which is how do you capture the data, which is radio frequency. The ID is the part that's probably the bigger opportunity and the bigger benefit, if you will, is uniquely identifying every selling unit in the supply chain differently, right? So if I have 4 loaves of French bread on the shelf, today I have a UPC of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the quantity is 4.
Right.
In the future, and now I have a unique serial number to each one of those. They have a unique property. And one of the properties could be, when was it made? Or when should it be marked down, et cetera. So GS1's led I think, really done. And I talked to Gina Morgan on a different topic the other day. I remember back when we were first doing EDI with P&G and Walmart, that GS1 didn't have the standards for figuring out how to do an electronic funds transfer. We were interested in trying to they had purchase orders and invoices, but nothing about EFT. So we were constantly pushing GS1 to develop standards. Now, Jonathan, GS1 is providing the standards way out in front of everybody else, and now we're trying to figure out how to take advantage of it. So specifically, it used to be that the actual ID information in an RFID tag was serial number and UPC or G10, right?
Right.
But you can now put attributes into that field, right? Like, what's the lot number of that product? What's the expiration date of that product? Whatever, some attributes you can put in there. Walk us through, how does that work? What does that look like?
It's a great point. And just to give a little history on this. So about 4.5 years ago, several people from industry came to me and said, hey, John, people are going into the food space and there isn't a mechanism here, right? And so they're starting to make up their own rules, which is incredibly bad, because then you have these silos and you don't have scalability that can come out of it, right? And so they were not using the standard the way that would be really truly interoperable. And so, there was a huge push to say, whoa, we need to be able to address this, amongst other things, perishable goods. So not just food, but pharmaceuticals, things like that. And so the tag data standard, the standard that governs how those bits and bytes are placed in an RFID tag was substantially updated a little over 3 years ago now. And what that does is it allows you to encode, like you said, a date or batch lot or other information, such as, say, net weight, or you could do country of origin if that was helpful. But you can put this rich data into the RFID tag, which is incredibly helpful. So let's say I have a conveyor line, right? I have items coming along a conveyor. I can read the tags and I can say, okay, the date on the tag just told me that this item is expiring in 2 days. I'm going to reroute this item so it's consumed more quickly, right? Or validated picking when things are coming out. Oh, this item that I'm picking is not nearly as fresh as this other item, right? So I'm going to adjust accordingly. So by putting the data in the tag, it was something I had mentioned about earlier, was that the food industry is structured quite differently, right? As far as just the flow as opposed to apparel, general merchandise. So like you have a ton of suppliers, a few distributors, and then a bunch of like retailers, operators, right? And so how do I get to cloud-based data? It's really very difficult. If I have to go search a cloud, go to a trade partner to get something very basic like an expiration date off of a particular item, that's really insurmountable. It's really very, very difficult to do from any scalability way. So if I could put the data in the tag, then that's a huge benefit. And it just applies everywhere across the board. And it addresses those waste concerns that we're talking about.
Yeah, let me walk the audience through kind of a practical example. I'm a baker in a grocery store. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm at work by 4:30. Nobody's around. First thing I have to do is literally do a scan or count or a barcode scan of every loaf of bread I've got out there, because some of the bread got marked down, some of it got thrown away, they didn't record it correctly. Some of it got damaged, whatever. So I got to make sure my on hands are right. So I literally go and do a cycle count, manual cycle count with scanning the barcodes. That updates all my on hands. Then I go, okay, well, I know how much I have. How much do I need to go bake? So I go bake that bread. Then I bake the bread and I put that all out. Then I got to go pick up every loaf of bread in my bakery before the store opens and say, has that expired? Has that expired? And if it's expired within a day, I can mark it down for a quick sale. We baked too much kind of thing. If it's marked down, if it's expired 3 days ago, then I need to throw it away and dispose of it, which is your waste problem. Under the future, if those particular loaves of bread are RFID tagged, number one, I grab a scanner, 2 minutes, I've scanned everything, it updates my on hand, I bake the bread, I put it out there, and I go, where are the 3 loaves of bread that I need to go find that are expired? Because I know there are 3 loaves of bread. One is a French bread, one is this bread, one is that bread. I know exactly what I got to go mark down. I don't have to go pick up everything or look at everything. I can literally say, these are the 3 that I need to go get. That's an enormous unlock. But that's because you put the actual date that it was produced or baked in the tag. I can say 3 days from now, I need to mark it down, and 5 days from now, I need to dispose of it, right? That's a huge unlock.
That's exactly right, Mike. And if we take that example and we expand it out to, let's say, a more densely packed environment, something it's in the weeds technically here, but talking about this, I can say, when I interrogate the RFID tags around me, I can say, hey, I'm only looking for items that expire, in the next 2 days. So I can say that in the tags that fit that criteria, those are the only tags that will respond back to me. So if I have a dense environment with a lot of RFID tags, I don't want to have to read every single one and evaluate everyone. The tags self-select themselves and say, no, I'm the one you're looking for. Right. And so, which is an incredible help as well as far as throughput and dealing with the volume of items in densely packed areas.
Wiliot's visibility platform connects the digital and physical worlds using IoT pixels, battery-free smart tags that push data to the cloud in real time without human intervention. Their mission is to make every single thing an agent of change, enabling ambient IoT by adding intelligence and automation to food, apparel, packaging, pharmaceuticals, and other products. Learn more at wiliot.com.
All right, well, let's play this out. So that's a huge unlock for the associate in the store. I don't have to count every loaf of bread. That saves me time. I don't have to go look at each date and pick it up and look at it. I literally know exactly so that's a huge unlock for the labor. But there's a customer benefit to this as well, which is there's nothing worse than buying bread and bringing it home and finding it a day later it's bad, or strawberries, or my wife's biggest pet peeves. I just bought these strawberries and 2 days later they're starting to get bad. Come on, really? 2 days? That's all I get? Well, you probably grabbed the ones that you didn't know it that were put out last, and they've expired by now. So the consumer part of that, how do you figure out how to tell that consumer, and how do you tell the retailer, hey, this is how fresh this bread is, or this is how long this has been out of the field? Is that possible from a data perspective?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So Sunrise 2027 is this global GS1 initiative to enable 2D barcodes at point of sale. Okay. And what that does is it moves those 2D barcodes, very likely would be QR codes. So a consumer can point their camera at it and get a really rich experience. So not only can I encode the same data that's in the RFID tag, so I can have an expiration date, I can have a batch lot. So if something's recalled and I go to buy it, the point of sale register says, no, you can't, you don't want this, right? Let us replace this, right? Yep. Or if it's expired, right? That type of thing. Also, there are certain expiry-based benefits that might come across. Say, there's a discount because this is, going to expire tomorrow. So there is certain consumer interaction there. But let's say I find out there's some sort of recall going on after I purchase something. Well, I can go to my refrigerator and point my camera at whatever object I'm wondering about and say, okay, tell me about this. Not only that, but I can gain supply chain visibility data. So the 2D barcode can hold a web resolvable address, meaning I can, as a brand owner, as a producer, I can direct a consumer to a web page that holds item level information. That's incredibly valuable, not just for food, but say for gray market tracking, for branding, consumer engagement, and elements like that. So that's just the first step. I think that at a broad level, the nature, the relationship between consumers and products is in the process of changing, because consumers will more and more realize, I can interact with this product at a whole nother level and get all this information out of it that it might be useful.
Yeah. And I think the key message for the audience is that again, we said RFID, RF is how you collect the data. ID is probably the more important part, which is the identification of the product.
Yep.
I can get to that ID through an RFID reader. I can get to that with a scanner. And you know, if there's anything good that happened out of COVID, everybody knows how to order off a menu with a QR code. So it's not like, how do you do this? my 87-year-old dad can order off a menu with a QR code, and he doesn't even know how to use a phone. But so that here's the challenge or the opportunity. And Jonathan, I know you know this, but we're working with a very big retailer that's literally going to be putting tag data standards into a RFID tag, and then eventually use that same method of identification data with a QR code. So at the register, you can go, that particular product is sold. That one just sold. So how do you make sure that the ID part of RFID that's in RFID and the actual the actual Sunrise 2027 data, which is GS1 data link, stays the same? Because if they get off, you got big problems, right? How do we do that? Because that's going to be important. It's got to point to the same product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So oftentimes you're encoding the RFID tag at the same time that you're quote unquote encoding, you're printing the QR code or the 2D barcode, right? So that same process gives you that alignment, which, case closed. You might have cases, really not in food per se, I don't think, but where you might have general merchandise items that there might be a two-step process. And that's something that the problem has been solved, but really sharing those best practices is something that actually I'm personally working on presently, as far as how do we move forward with a common understanding. The other thing, Mike, is that, so Auburn University shared earlier this year that they had onboarded over 4,000 suppliers to use RFID, which is fantastic. It shows a great deal of industry growth, but it also shows the challenge of growth, right? As far as what are the best practices around serialization? Do people know what those are? And do we need to be doing more to communicate the best practices, the value of serialization to brand owners and whatnot? So I think they're just natural growing pains out there as we move forward.
Yeah, it's really exciting, but it also, if we don't do it right, if we have a different ID from an RFID and a QR code that points to a different ID, we're going to have a mess. Right. It's just going to be an unmitigated disaster. So we just got to be really, and then part of that is probably what I would suggest is the first thing we got to do is make sure that the packaging suppliers are all educated. Because if they're going to encode an RFID tag with Tag Data Standards 2.0 and write a QR code that matches it, that's kind of match, guys. It's a new part of the Alex spec. If they don't match, we've got a disaster on our hands. So
that's right. Yeah.
So I gave you the example of bread markdown, but Tag Data Standards 2.0 is much broader than just expired product. What are some of those other attributes that people are looking? I mean, sure, there's hundreds that you can do, but what are some of the key enablers from a business perspective that people are going, man, we can do this and this and this? What are those key few that people are pushing for?
Yeah, we mentioned briefly already recall. So if I have a batch lot, right? So it's interesting. Batch lot is less specific than serial number, but industry typically uses a batch lot for recall purposes. So so batch lot based recall, that's one very important element that closely aligns with that. The net weight, interestingly enough. So certain things where, like say you have steaks, right? Very high value items that might be on a pallet that come in. Well, presently, without RFID, those pallets are being depalletized just to barcode scan the GS1 128 barcodes on each one of them, because those contain the net weight data, which is that important for the process. So all of that physical activity is consumed just to get to some data that you could just as easily RFID tag and be able to read without having to be depalletized. And then another one is country of origin, just for customs reasons, and for, like, if I source from one country, I might pay a tariff, but if I source from another, I might not, going into a certain geography. And so being able to leverage that is also very interesting. Those are the top ones that I'm seeing right now.
Okay, I got one to add to your portfolio for my friends at Walmart, because it was one of the last projects that I did. RFID for automotive tires was a huge unlock. Because if I go in to have my car work done, I need 4 tires. They go, yep, we got them. I go shop the store, and about 20 minutes later, I get a page. Come on back to Automotive Care Center, Mike Grant. I go back there and go, we only have 3. We don't have 4. You want us to put 3 on? No, I don't want 3 tires. I need 4. So that was the first one from what we started on. But one of the things that I learned on this, and I had no idea, it is up to the industry to educate the consumer about the DOT number, the Department of Transportation number that's on the sidewall of the tire. Well, what happens is, I can't speak to all retailers that are leveraging these for RFID for tires, but they literally grab a tire, they put it up on a table, and they literally key in the DOT number into the customer record. That is a complete and utter failure. You've got very high quality trained technicians who really know how to work on tires being data entry people. You know that ain't going to go well, right? So could we put Goodyear, Michelin, can you actually create an RFID tag that gives me the serial number, but as extended attributes, I get the actual DOT number that's assigned to that car? Absolutely, we could do that. And then we could transfer that to the customer record so we don't have to have people keying in things at the side of the tire. I think that's a big opportunity, but that's me. I'm a little bit selfish in that way.
No, I agree. And I mean, imagine trying to, it's not easy to read those embossed, numbers or letters, on the side of a sidewall. And
they're incredibly important. They tell you when it was manufactured. And oftentimes, my wife and I have been RVers for 30 years. You never wear out the tread of a tire. Never. What you do is it ages, because after about 5 years of it sitting in the sun creeps into it. That's what makes the tire dangerous from a blowout standpoint. It's not you don't have any tread. I have never seen an RV tire get bald unless people just drive it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Normally, it's the sidewall being exposed to the sun, which creates a weakness, and then you have a blowout. But that's what happened. But that DOT number, the basic rule, these things are not cheap. These RV tires are $1,000 a piece. They are not cheap. Wow. So you don't want to replace them. But if they're over 5 years old, the basic rule is, especially the steer ones, the ones that steer the vehicle, you replace them after 5 years, even if they look brand new, because you do not want to have a blowout in an RV. Not a good thing. Not a good situation. Yeah. All right, Jonathan, we're going to switch gears a little bit. There's also a industry move right now that I know you're actively involved with, and I'm going to ask you to kind of comment on it. It's this next nav discussion, where today, and you're much better expertise in this, but today RFID operates in a certain frequency, 902 to something. It's a range of frequency, just like you have on your FM dial. There's a range that is devoted to RFID. That's right. There's some folks who are kind of petitioning the FCC to take that away from RFID so they can do some other stuff with it. Obviously, that has huge implications on the RFID that's currently in place with all retailers and suppliers and airline, et cetera. So I know GS1 has a position on that. Give us a little context about why did this come about, and what, number 2, was GS1 doing about it? Number 3, is there anything that you need help from an industry standpoint about it?
Right. So to be clear, so GS1 US, our governance is such that we're neutral, right? And so we can't advocate, we can't say, hey, everybody, go do this, right? But we can inform. And that's what we have been doing. We've been informing industry about this. And so we've seen basically this petition. So this 902 to 928 megahertz range, like you said, it's a frequency range that the RFID technology operates within. It's not just RFID, though. There are a number of other technologies that operate in that space. So something called LoRa, which relates to metering. So at your house, if there's a water meter or a natural gas meter type of thing, that's likely using LoRa, or smart buildings are using that technology as well. The tolling agencies, rail uses RFID. Tolling uses the same type of RFID. Certain aerospace, but also amateur radio. So there's a number of users of this kind of unlicensed space. It's kind of carved out for, look, you don't need to get a license from the FCC in order to operate an RFID reader, or in order to do smart metering, smart buildings, those types of things. So this is a range that aligns. I'll also say that the 902 to 928 megahertz range aligns with a global set of ranges. So they're either at the same frequency or they're right next to it, so that an RFID tag is operating somewhat similarly as far as like how it's tuned, how it's communicating with the reader. So
you
for
mean so the U.S. and the U.K., for example, would potentially be very close in range. So
they're very similar in range. So you could take a RFID tag in the U.S. and it's going to work in the U.K. It might have slightly different, parameters. In the past, tags were more tuned for specific regions, and now they're much more kind of called global tags. Like the tags can operate there. So. But we've seen over 800 responses to the negative of this petition saying we don't want this. So there's a lot of voices, and I think only 5 responses to the positive. So it is that's helpful to see. Yeah. And those responses are interesting because you see, I think one of the most interesting ones, there are a lot of really interesting ones, was the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They cited over 71 associations, including the NRF, saying we're against this and here are the reasons why. But yeah, Texas Instruments, Internet and TV associations, Boeing, Rain Alliance, and AIM Global, they put in helpful stuff. GS1 US and Global Office put in statements as well. This group called the Resilient Navigation and Timing Foundation that had like former U.S. Space Command general, whatnot. These, like, it was really interesting. You're like, well, okay, like it's a nice kind of roll call to see, who is using this frequency range. Mm-hmm. So what I'll say is that in 2013, a similar petition came before the FCC by the same organization. The FCC rejected it, saying you're not looking out for this large constituency. Yep. So I can't make statements on behalf of the FCC. I think at this point, basically the door is closed on being able to provide comments or input. The only thing that people might be able to do is talk to their senator or congressman, that type of thing, to be able to say, hey, I have concerns about this. But at this point, it's kind of in a black box to say, okay, what will the FCC do with this? Will they try and move forward with some sort of, testing, or maybe we'll give you a little bit of this frequency range or what have you, to see, what would the impact be of trying to make any kind of adjustment there. But at this point, it's kind of a wait and see. Okay.
And do we know when decisions are going to be made, or are we still just kind of waiting on that?
Really, it's funny because they could just choose to do absolutely nothing. But I think that the best kind of guess I would say I have is that there'd be something by the end of the year that's indicating, okay, some direction. And I also wonder if like the presidential election that's coming up might have some minor influence on the decision making. Sometimes agencies tend to kind of hold off on making substantial decisions, to see, all right, who's going to win the election, what's the administration going to do. But yeah, it's a little bit of it's hard to see that crystal ball.
Got it. So the practical reality is, if it was to change, mm-hmm. I think they're asking for a subset of that 902 to 928 frequency. They're not asking for the whole thing. They're asking for a subset.
Right.
What would be the practical implications if that did go through in terms of what the impact would be on the RFID industry?
So the Rain Alliance did a very technical assessment of this, and their assessment, absent real testing and absent, a lot of kind of X factors, is that it would be significant. It would significantly degrade the RFID technology. Okay. I cannot imagine the FCC saying, yeah, that's okay. Especially because not only are the entities that I mentioned there, but they're also U.S. government agencies, including the Department of Defense, using the technology, right? Okay. So I think it's safe to say that the technology is not truly endangered. It's more of okay, is there bartering? Is there adjustment of frequency ranges that might possibly happen? Really, ideally not. But yeah, that's. I think there's so much weight behind the technology at current use. I mean, we're talking a massive infrastructure that surrounds us. Multiple tolling agencies saying, there's no way you can do this, or you're going to cost us tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure cost. It's just not feasible.
So I'm still trying to get down to what does it mean? So if I have 100 tags in front of me under current standards and I scan them all, I'm probably going to get all 100, if not 99. I'll get a lot of them. If I do that with half of these frequencies gone, I'm assuming I'm not going to get all 100, right? Is that what we're talking about? It would literally miss tags that are reading today that it wouldn't be able to read because they're operating in that frequency range.
See, you're cornering me, Mike. You're making me. So best I can say.
I'm trying to think if I'm a retailer. Do I care about this? The answer is absolutely. You care about this.
Right.
It's too late to provide input, but you have to understand this may have a significant negative implication if this gets approved from a retail perspective.
In my view, this is just my John Gregory's opinion, not GS1 US, is that the worst case scenario that I can imagine is that I would have to update my reader firmware to say, okay, I'm not operating in this broad of a spectrum. I'm operating in a more narrow frequency range. And now I'm back. So I've operated with that. I don't see that, but that would be a lot of effort, as far as going and flashing.
It'd be a lot of effort, and it would degrade performance.
Potentially.
I'm going from a 5-lane super highway to a single lane. I mean, I'm still going to get there, but it's going to be a lot more congested, right? That's my non-technical analogy. It's not a good thing for the RFID retail industry, for sure.
If this was it's just hard because there's so many variables. But if this were to go through, it would be very bad for the technology. But I just can't see the FCC saying, that's let's do that. That just doesn't make sense, especially because we see 800 to 5 or more than 800 to 5, against. But to imagine how might the two play together? There would have to be a lot of development of saying, okay, because the thing is that you have what's called sideband emissions. So if I'm blasting away at 1,000 times the power of an RFID reader on an adjacent frequency band, I'm going to have some sideband emissions that coming across. So how those actually work and to what extent, maybe the license is saying, we get all this power, but we're only using this much. I don't, so it's just too early to say definitively.
BOP's collaborative inventory intelligence technology is helping many retailers and CPGs such as Colgate-Palmolive, PepsiCo, Coty, and Duracell avoid lost sales, markdowns, and spoilage by streamlining their next-gen collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment process. Learn more at bops.ai.
I'm going to switch to something else because I know you're very passionate about this. You and I were involved, and I talked to Andy earlier from GS1, and I talked to Justin Patton a few days ago about our favorite project called the CHIP project, the Chain Integration Pilot, which was a nice way of saying we started RFID in 2003 at Walmart because we wanted to track product from a manufacturer through their distribution network to the retailer's distribution network to the store, et cetera. We found out that was all pretty good, but when it got to the stores, when it got lost. So a lot of been focus over the last 10 to 15 years has been on the store. People are now starting to look at RFID up the supply chain since most of this stuff is source tagged. And so things like claims elimination and product authentication and things like that were huge topics in 2018 when we wrote the CHIP project. And what's interesting is GS1 already has the standard for transmitting that level of serialized data, which is EPCIS. So give us a status update. Are we seeing traction in the industry with different trade partners actually starting to share serialized data for use cases, or are we still sort of in the infancy stage?
Yeah, it depends on the industry. Let me start by talking about, so I wrote a white paper in 2006 on this. And there's a quote that I included from a guy named Alan Estevez, who was in charge of the Marine's supply chain. And it's a fantastic quote. He said that the RFID had changed the dynamic within the supply chain from where's my stuff to, I can see my stuff there, to I want you to put my stuff on the next truck because I know it's right there, right? Yeah. So the visibility, right? And you think, okay, the marine supply chain would share a common system, if you will, across that supply chain. Right. And so you have that benefit of being able to reach out and say, there it is, I'm commanding you, send me this, I need this right away, right? Whereas in industry, you have different business entities. And so getting them to share data with each other, how do they do that? Right. And it's really, it's different data. Say EDI, here's a purchase order, or here's a shipment confirmation or advanced shipping notice. Okay, those are business documents, but low level information. These serialized identifiers were read at this time and place, or here's this condition information or whatnot. And so being able to share that low level information with trade partners is really what the EPCIS standard does. And it's really an umbrella for not just RFID data, but just any sensor data. Right. Any data that I have a cold chain system, I would capture, temperature on a regular interval. I could use EPCS to do that. So in the pharmaceutical space, the Drug Supply Chain Security Act has certain requirements. And so EPCIS is used in more than 90% of pharmaceutical-based supply chain transactions.
Wow.
So it's very broadly used, right? For FSMA 204, Rule 204, which is, coming around the bend in the food space, EPCIS is a perfect fit for the requirements of the regulation. So what are my key data elements? Oh, that's all included in the GS1 system of standards. And so then the critical tracking events, CTEs, right? Those are all perfectly aligned with EPCIS. So there's a nice movement toward that. And then, as you mentioned with Project Chip, we do see a substantial move forward in the usage of EPCIS because people are becoming more and more aware of their supply chain pain points. And being able to capture that serialized data is incredibly helpful in solving things. So we see a lot of advancements there. One thing I'll mention, we also see, for example, UPS, right? This large rollout that they have. And for them, I'm thinking, this is amazing. Now they're tracking their shipments, their parcels, right? They're not tracking the content. But I'm thinking, well, if you're reading RFID tags throughout your entire supply chain, like you could solve some problems for customers. It says, okay, hey, is this item, did you have possession of it all the way through? Or can you confirm for me, instead of me putting my infrastructure in my DC, what were the items that came in and how does that align with the EPCIS packet from the shipper, that type of thing. So I think there's a lot of growth and opportunity in that space.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you and I have been doing this for a long time from an industry standpoint, and every time we think all the problems have been solved, we find there's 5 more opportunities that are out there, and we've got solutions for them. It just takes a long time. I still believe that fundamentally, 2 things about the industry, and that people have asked, okay, Mike, you've been doing it for this long. What are the big opportunities in front of us? And we've talked about both of them today. Number one is RFID for food products and food safety and markdowns and all that kind of stuff. Huge opportunity that nobody's really taken advantage of in the grocery channel. QSRs, quick serve restaurants, are taking advantage of it, but not the food industry from a grocery perspective. The other one is we've got to figure out we've been spending for the last 30 years, we've been transmitting purchase orders and invoices and ASNs and payments via, EDI. It's time to figure out how to get down to that serialized level, because that's where the big breakthrough comes. Because it's never usually, well, you didn't ship me enough. Well, prove it. I can show you the shipment. I want to know what was the individual license plate of each one of the items you sent me. Because if I could read them here, I can go, yeah, I'm sorry, I accused you of not sending them, and I in fact got them all. Thank you very much. It throws away that whole argument. I sent you 50, I only got 20. I sent you 50, I only got 20. That's what happens today, every single day.
Yeah, and to build on that even more, so there's a great New York Times Magazine article from back in January of this year. It has this picture of near Long Beach of just the train tracks running through like a sea of empty boxes. So the people have been helping themselves to the content of the trains, just leaving the boxes there, right? And so the scope and scale of organized retail crime and in-transit theft, we tend to think of store theft or shrink, right? But there's the article is compared to like flash mobs, going and stealing. They said, the more is stolen in the supply chain than in the stores, right?
Wow.
And so you think, okay, if I can identify things uniquely and I can track them, and consumers are engaging in them. So that's interesting. So if I buy something online, I might not know that it's stolen, right? I might not sense that. If it might even been shipped to me via UPS, right? Who might be reading, an RFID tag in process, right? So there's a lot of interesting points if we start pulling things together, where we might be able to solve even more problems, using this the power of unique identity. So.
Yeah, and I keep pushing on Justin to get that chip demo back because I thought that was the most powerful thing. That not they haven't done some great things, but Auburn's done a lot of great things. But that chip demo said, I need 50. I send that to the supplier. They put 49 in the box, or they put 50 in the box, but half of them are wrong. They don't know. They weigh the box. It weighs 50, so they put it on the trailer. Meanwhile, UPS picks it up. Somebody steals some from the UPS, and then ultimately Walmart doesn't get the 50 that they ordered. They go, I don't get the 50 they ordered. They blame Haynes. Well, maybe not Haynes' fault. Maybe Haynes' fault, but that whole possession of ownership gets tracked, not because somebody has to scan something, but they're just moving their boxes, doing what they normally do. I can see exactly when those products fell off. I put them on a train. I measured, I put them on the train. When I unloaded from the train, they weren't there. Somebody stole them off the train. Somebody asked me the other day, and I thought, I never thought about this before, but they say, in one sentence, define RFID for me. And I went, I don't think I've ever been asked that. And I go, I think it's like a flashlight in a dark room. And they were like, what? I go, it's going to uncover stuff you never knew was there. Yeah. And they were like, I don't get that. And we just went on to another conversation. But the more I thought about it, it's like, that's what that does. It highlights where the things happen that I went into a dark room. I couldn't see anything. I turned the flashlight on. I found what I was looking for. Or I found there's a whole bunch of stuff here that's not supposed to be here. I mean, it does provide you that data, but you can capture it. And I think we've also got to move away from, okay, stop your work, go grab a handheld and go wand it and put fixed infrastructure in so they can just do the work that they're doing, and behind the scenes it's tracking where everything is. Those are the three things from an industry standard that I think we have to finally get to. Food, upstream supply chain, and we've got to put some fixed infrastructure in that takes the wand out of people's hands, because that's just not fun work.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, totally agree. RFID tends to reveal things that you thought weren't happening or could never happen, if you will.
Sometimes you don't like what it revealed.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mr. Gregory, we've been in for a long time. So my favorite question at the end of this is, what did I not ask you that I should have? What's on your mind that you said, man, I really had this on my mind. I really wish I could have talked about this a little bit. What's going on? Already closing comments you got. I'm not trying to.
Yeah. No. I think the relationship between consumers and things is going to change. Yeah, you got the 2D side, right? Okay, I got 2D, and that data for the RFID supply chain and in-store reads is helpful for that storytelling and whatnot, and being able to connect consumers with what's really happening, right?
Right.
But some recent statements. So just the end of last month, Qualcomm, Decathlon, and Pinch had some statements about mobile phones having RFID reads, right?
Yeah.
And I've been digging into that. And actually, as an example, there is a high end. It's not a mobile phone. It's a professional camera that will digitally sign its pictures, so that it's ensuring authenticity of, like, yes, at this time and place, this picture was taken. Right. So there's a whole standard and a whole realm of attestation of truth, if you will, truth telling, like this really happened, right? And nobody can hack it, if you will. And so the idea that a consumer could have an RFID enabled phone that would have that capability to say, no, nobody can hack this. This really is happening, is an interesting kind of step change in how people relate to things. Would it relate to augmented reality? Would it relate to somebody goes into Walmart and Walmart says, hey, if you open this app up and walk around in our store, while you're walking around, we'll give you a discount, and that reader's reading the inventory for them, right? So the consumers are the ones reading the tags. So, they're not pressing a button, they're not pointing anything, they just happen to have the device on them. I mean, it's kind of out there, right? But just this world of a new layer of connectivity that's out there. It could be 5 years down the road, 10 years, who knows how long. But it's an interesting door that's been opened through this thought, through this thought leadership that we're seeing. So,
that's awesome.
Yes.
John, it's been great. As always,
great,
you are a plethora of information. I learned that word the other day. I had to look it up. Somebody said plethora, and I went, what the heck is that? Oh, that means a lot. It's a lot of information. Thank you very much for your time. I'm assuming I'm going to be seeing you in Auburn here in a week or so.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll see you there.
Got a lot of fun stuff going on. In the meantime, I've got an entire trailer with sound equipment. Anytime you want to take it on the road, buddy.
All right, man. It's good to know. So. It's good to know. We'll have to get back together in a year and talk about, hopefully we can get another chip project going. Solve, because those are big problems that we want to solve. And it'd be great to be able to showcase it.
They are. And what I really, really liked about that demo is anytime you can put somebody in the environment where they experience it.
Yeah.
Right. You show them it in a PowerPoint. Yeah, I got a PowerPoint. You show it to them in a video. It's a little bit closer. They can start to see the story. You make them experience it, which is what we did through that demo. They were like, oh man, this is a problem. Wow. How do we solve this? I mean, got them to ask the right questions. And I still think that whole, the whole claims issue and the product authentication issue goes away real quick when you just say, we're just going to read it and you tell me exactly the serial numbers. And if I didn't get them, I'm not paying for them. So it's good stuff. So John, thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike. Great talking.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.